Good morning. On the afternoon, about 2:20 in the middle of the afternoon on Tuesday, January the 18th, 3 people were shot inside an RTA bus, that's a bus hub, downtown Dayton on South Main Street. 2 juvenile defendants were arrested by the Dayton Police Department in conjunction with the incident. 1 juvenile has been charged with tampering with evidence. The other defendant, 17-year-old Shyheim Bowman, has been charged with 3 counts of felonious assault with a deadly weapon, 3 counts of felonious assault causing serious physical harm, 1 count of carrying concealed weapon, and 1 count of tampering with evidence. All 6 of the felonious assault counts include 3-year firearm specifications. Today we have filed a motion to have the defendant transferred from the juvenile court to be tried as an adult. The facts of this case are very disturbing, especially considering we are talking about a juvenile violently firing rounds inside a public bus. The defendant was on an RTA bus as it arrived at the hub, right not too far from here in downtown Dayton. The defendant leaned out of the bus, out of the window, and started yelling at several people who he knew standing on the platform outside the bus. As a result, several of these people came onto the bus where he instigated a fight, and a fist fight began on the bus between several people, including the 2 defendants. The RTA bus driver attempted to break up the fight, but the defendant, Bowman, pulled a loaded handgun from his pocket and started firing rounds inside the bus. Ultimately, 3 persons were shot, including the RTA bus driver. After numerous 911 calls, the defendants were quickly located nearby and were taken into custody. Now, there's been a lot of attention recently to the increase in crimes being committed by juveniles. And we're not talking about shoplifting. We're not talking about taking something or stealing. We're talking about serious crimes, and we're talking about felony crimes. In this particular case, the defendant showed absolutely no concern for the safety of others. There were a number of people on the bus, elderly people on the bus, and also nearby the bus, who were just going about their business, wanting to be downtown, going to or from where they were either shopping or having the day. There is simply no reason why a juvenile, first of all, should be in the possession of a firearm, and second of all, firing a handgun in the middle of downtown Dayton inside a bus. It is our understanding from the police investigation that this defendant took the firearm from his mother's bedroom without her knowledge or permission. And sadly, the defendant's mother purchased this gun. She purchased it on December the 8th of 2021 and didn't properly store the gun or have a trigger lock on the gun. Now, I've had a lot of calls and saying, why? Well, you can't blame, to me, this kind of conduct on COVID or the pandemic. It doesn't happen. Or video games that we hear so much about now. The blame is on the perpetrator. And there must be consequences when people commit crimes, whether they're adults or juveniles. Enough is enough. We cannot simply permit this happening in our community, and we all have a stake in it. We all have a belief, and we all feel that we should be able to live in a community and enjoy our community and not have to put up with this type of behavior. Again, there must be consequences when people commit crimes. Another factor I want to point out, and another reason we're filing a motion to transfer, is that in the juvenile system, the longest a juvenile can be either incarcerated or supervised is until they are 21 years of age. There's no post-release control, no post-supervision, probation after 21. They're simply released and let loose. In this case, the defendant, who will turn 18 in October, meaning the longest that he could be held is a little over 3 years, and that simply is not enough time for someone who has shot 3 individuals. Again, we're filing a motion to transfer in juvenile court. That was filed this morning, and we will be proceeding with the hearings as soon as they are set. Any questions?
Talk about how fortunate you feel that at this point you didn't have any deaths from this incident.
Just by the grace of God, that someone who's 17 comes on a bus and just indiscriminately starts shooting at people, but also when innocent people are shot. You don't go to a fist fight or an argument with a gun. And that's what this defendant did. And it's just very fortunate that this bus driver, who did his best to break up the fight, this fist fight, and then ends up being shot.
Mr. Heck, how much of a message would you like to send out to the parents of juveniles, especially when guns are involved, and a message about gun locks? Had there been a gun lock on there, this may not have happened.
And again, I think you can see from the statistics that we got from all the police departments, you're seeing a great increase in the number of firearms that unfortunately juveniles have. And there's just no reason for a juvenile to be carrying a gun on a bus downtown. So I think we all have to be careful about that and be aware of that, because it takes all of us to correct this problem, especially custodians, parents, neighbors. If they know this is going on, just like I say in child abuse cases, see something, say something, because we just cannot let this continue.
What can you tell us, as you were investigating this case, Mr. Bowman, is there a chance that he could face other charges in connection with other incidents? In other words, do you suspect him of being involved in other incidents or crimes around the county?
At this time, I don't believe there is no other evidence that we have at this time of any other crimes that he has committed.
So then, for people that don't know, the next step is an amenability hearing in juvenile court. Can you talk about the next steps?
Ann Gramza, who's the chief of our juvenile division, you want to talk about the next steps?
Thank you, sir. The next step would be the scheduling of a probable cause hearing to determine whether or not there's probable cause to believe that the juvenile committed the crimes with which we have charged him with. Once we've established that, the court would then move to an amenability hearing, because this motion to transfer would be discretionary.
So it would be discretionary in this case?
Correct.
So the ultimate decision then lies in the hand of the juvenile court judge?
Yes.
To track him as an adult?
Yes. It would
I
lie.
mean, yeah, in other words, to move him over.
Correct.
The decision to move him to adult court will still be in the hands of the juvenile court judge. 'Cause
Correct.
It's not an automatic.
And out of respect, can we get your first name, your last name? Please
Sure.
spell it.
It's Ann, A-N-N. My last name is Gramza. It's G-R-A-M as in Mary, Z-A.
You mentioned that you don't want to. You want to send a message, in other words, that these you don't want the community thinking that you're trying to come down hard on a kid that stole Reese's cups. I mean, this is serious crime, and it has to be dealt with as such. Talk about that.
Well, you know, like I said before, we're seeing, I think, an uptick in the number of serious felony crimes being committed by juveniles. And there's so many reasons, and that's for another day, that people can point out of why that is. Some systemic, some other reasons, maybe to an individual or whatever. The bottom line, though, is that everyone realizes you're not to be packing a gun. You're not to be shooting a gun in a bus in the middle of downtown. I mean, it doesn't take, you know, any type of a, you know, Phi Beta Kappa person to realize that you can't be doing that. And so that is understood. And I think getting into some of the causes, we do have to look and say, what's going on here? And that, you know, it goes right back. We cannot get away with supervision and knowing what your child is doing. There's just no replacement for that. And, you know, part of it is, I think that a lot of these individuals have not been in school, either because schools have not been able to be in session, or maybe the kids are just not attending school. And that's something else that we're looking at, not only in child abuse cases, but in these kind of cases, so that we can have another set of eyes on juveniles, so that we know what's going on. But it's not an easy fix, except one thing's for sure, it's obvious, and people realize that you do not start shooting a gun in a bus. And when you do that type of a violent, serious act, an adult-type crime, then you should face adult-type consequences. And again, the main thing here is there's got to be continued supervision. You can't say that, okay, I have this individual and he shot 3 people. I mean, can you imagine being on that bus? I mean, we have when you see the video on that bus, which we have, and you see, well, as Ms. Weber pointed out this morning, we see one woman there with a walker, and she's in the middle of this. What can she do? She looks so helpless. And so, you know, there's got to be some type of continued supervision with juveniles who commit these kind of crimes.
A lot of people rely on the RTA bus to take them to work, to get them home. I mean, probably a lot of people are also afraid to even get on the bus right now because of what had occurred. What kind of things is the city of Dayton going to do to ensure safety on these buses from here on out?
Well, unfortunately, I think that's something you're going to have to ask the RTA in the city of Dayton what they plan on doing. I can just tell you, though, that the people that I have talked to are the people who have called me and said, you know, we just can't let this happen. We just can't let it be that this type of activity is not punished. And I said, well, there's no question about it. And that's the whole thing about consequences. And we've all learned that years ago. But we're not talking about, again, a bike theft or shoplifting. We're talking about here a serious felony crime when we're just very fortunate that people didn't get killed. And as you pointed out, there are many people who use the RTA for transportation, and they must have a sense that they can get on that bus and have a sense that they feel safe when they're on that bus.
Mr. Heck, when it comes to the word severity, I've learned that word from your department. Responsibility, can you shift the blame from the parents to the juvenile? Or, I mean,
well, again, I think it takes everyone, and it certainly, you cannot, it starts with parents or the custodians, that they have a responsibility. You can't shook that responsibility. And so it's always on the parents to make sure to know what your kids are doing. And we who are parents know that. And many times it doesn't just end when that child becomes an adult either, as many of us know. So you've got to know what your children are doing. It just doesn't stop. But at the end of the day, the person who put that gun in his pocket, the person who took that gun with him on that bus, the person who took that gun out of his pocket and shot indiscriminately was this defendant.
Was this an easy decision?
I'm sorry?
Was this an easy decision to file this motion? What's your process like when you make these decisions?
Well, I wouldn't say easy. I think that some cases cry out for being transferred. And I mean, unfortunately, we're seeing several of them that are pending right now that we are in the process of looking at. This is the first one. And I think when we look at that, and Ms. Gramza, who's the chief of our juvenile division, Ms. Weber, one of our trial supervisors, myself, when we review these cases and say, what should we do here? And look at the facts and circumstances, which we always do in these cases. It's not just an automatic decision that we say, fine, on every case, as you know, and on every case we don't ask for a transfer. It's only on the most serious and severe cases that we ask for a transfer, and this is one of them.
This might be for you, Matt, or it might be for Ann, I'm not sure. Can you go over with me what cases are automatic bindovers to adult court for a juvenile? Is there an age and a crime that makes it an automatic bindover? This one is not, but what would be the circumstances?
The legislature, of course, sets what is what is called an automatic transfer. There's still certain things that have to be proven, but what is a discretionary transfer? One would think that this would be an automatic transfer because it's obviously involving a gun, it's obviously involving someone who's 17, and 3 people were shot. Under the law, it is not. It's still up to the juvenile court judge. I would think that there would be this would be a no-brainer and it would be transferred because of the facts and circumstances relating to this case, the seriousness of the event, and the serious injuries that were caused. For example, a murder charge would be an automatic transfer. So that would be another one. Ann, I don't know if you want to speak just generally to that.
No matter what the age, or is there also an age involved with a murder charge?
There is an age component, and then there are some other predicates that have to be met in order for certain things to be mandatory bindovers, and then the rest would be discretionary as long as they're 14 and the offense is a felony. And it varies from crime to crime, so it can be kind of complicated, I think.
It's very rarely a blanket thing, yeah.
Correct. There's a set of Category 1 offenses, and then if they're 14 or 15 at the time of those, or 16 or 17, they're mandatory, 14 or 15 with other predicates, and then Category 2 offenses, if they're 16 or 17 with certain predicates, then they become mandatory. So that's typically how it works.
Is murder in Category 1?
Murder is a Category 1. Felonious assault is a Category 2 offense.
Matt, you mentioned there was an argument before the shooting. Can you tell us what the argument was about?
I really don't want to get into that now, but there was some shouting by the defendant outside to people outside of the bus who were on the platform, and as a result of that and that instigation, some of the people from the platform then entered the bus with the idea, and then they engaged in a fist fight until the defendant pulled the gun.
The juvenile that was charged with tampering, is he going to remain in juvenile court?
That case is pending our review now. Just like you said, when we go into these cases, we look thoroughly at the evidence and the facts and circumstances, and we were still reviewing the information and the facts and circumstances concerning the second juvenile.
Mr. Rick, understanding that this is a juvenile we're talking about, to the best of your department's knowledge, does he have a past history with the juvenile department as well?
I don't believe that he has any much of a past history at all. You know, unfortunately, this one, he picked the wrong type of a serious felony type incident now to make it one of his stalwart, conduct.
Can you spell the juvenile's name for us, or before we get something?
Do what?
The name. Can you spell the name for us, or before we get something?
She's going to give you something with the name on it.
Finally, is there any update on the Lyft driver shooting at the juveniles? Are they also going to face adult court?
We are in the process of reviewing. We're still getting some evidence on the tragedy involving the Lyft driver, Lyft drivers, I should say, and other related crimes. And we will be back in touch with you probably next week or the week after concerning that incident. Okay? Thank you very much. Really appreciate it, especially letting the community know how serious this is, but that we are going to hold any of these types of juveniles responsible for what they do.